Hello, everyone. Happy So What Day. I hope you're having a great Tuesday and a great start to your week. I am very excited to bring you some new information from Sulky. We are in the middle of National Sewing Month, and we are still celebrating the 35th anniversary of Sulky. And I am so happy to announce that we are launching our very own podcast. I know it deserves a round of applause. Yes. Just like so many things here at Sulky, it has been a long time coming. We have been working on this podcast for quite a while, and I'm just so excited to tell you all about it. And I have a special guest today who's going to join me in just a moment to talk about the podcast. I'll keep you all on the edge of your seats for that for just a moment, because first of all, I want to remind you all that our embroidery sewing session with Julie Trieb of Designs by Juju is active today. That's right. I know many of you have already been on the platform and are watching your videos and working your way through the lessons to create your very own In the Hoop notebook covers. You can still get in on the action though. This is not a live event. It is an on-demand, extensive embroidery sewing session. It comes with 7 lessons that include tons of video content starring Julie Trieb, the digitizer and designer herself behind all of these great designs. She takes you through step by step how to create these notebook covers in the hoop of your embroidery machine. And not only do you get 7 lessons, but there are multiple sections within each lesson that dive deeper into the techniques that she's covering. So lesson 1 is the introduction. You're going to learn about the supplies that you need, the notebooks that you can cover, the sizes, all the design specs, everything you need to know about the project itself. So within lesson 1, there's going to be multiple sections for you to navigate through. Some of those sections will have video. Some of them just have text that guide you through the process. Some of them have ancillary materials. You will find your downloads, which come with purchase of the session, on those course pages as you work your way through the lessons. So for those of you who have wondered, where are my designs? I received my kit for this session, but where are the designs? They live on the course platform. So you can easily retrieve them there at any time now that the course is active. Just go to your library, head on over to the session pages, and you can begin the course. Now, as you're working your way through it and you scroll down, you will see a button that says Mark as Complete. If you mark those lessons and sections within the lesson as complete, if you have to go do something else with your day, you only have a little bit of time to sew that day and you want to return to the course and pick up where you left off, that's where you need to hit the Mark as Complete button so that the platform knows where to bring you back when you return to your lessons. So it's a pretty cool feature and makes this really interactive. And it's really nice to be able to schedule out your sewing. Let's say you only have 15, 20 minutes. You can watch a video, mark it as complete, and then head on back when you have some more time to sew and pick up right where you left off. So it's pretty great. Also, all of the lessons that have video, all of those videos are on demand, watchable at any time. So you can grab up a kit if you haven't already. And when your kit arrives, you can refresh your memory, go back to those lessons, rewind, pause, fast forward, all of those good things while you're working your way through your kit. So you can actually do your own sew along with Julie right next to you on screen, guiding you through the process. So it's pretty awesome. I'm really excited for you all to, work your way through the session. I know a number of you, I recognize your names. You have been telling me that you've been signed up for a couple weeks now, so you're just as excited as I am to get started on your notebook covers. As you know, I have made several of these. I am quite addicted to making my own notebook covers. I've made a couple of them as gifts. I've given them away to my kids' teachers. And, a number of you said last week that you were excited about making these to cover your books. So not only notebooks and journals and pocket calendars, but if you have books that are 4x6 or 5x7, you can create covers for those as well. So they do, dual duty, triple duty, lots of things you can do with these notebook covers. And here's what that beautiful kit looks like. Julie helped curate this kit to bring you these really beautiful art gallery fabrics. These are 4 fat quarters, so you can decide which fabric you want on your notebook cover, on the spine, on the lining, and on your, what are these called? Your tabs. I have forgotten. I apologize what those are called. But at any rate, you get to just decide which fabrics to use where. And then you also get a little fabric square. You can see it behind those cam snaps in this photo. A little neutral fabric square that you use for your little customizable applique. So Julie's going to take you through all of the steps, like I said, to create these and also personalize your own notebook cover. So you'll get one blank design, and then she will take you through step by step how to merge a design, how to use software to personalize your little applique. You could put a monogram, a message, your own little affirmation. So it's a really, really great way to make lots of notebook covers for different friends, maybe for your sewing guild buddies, things like that. All right, so I hope you're all as excited as I am to get started on your notebook covers, and we really look forward to seeing your progress and the notebook covers that you create over on our Facebook group, which is called Sulky Stitch and Post. If you're not part of that Facebook group yet, all you need to do is go on Facebook and search Sulky Stitch and Post, and then ask to join. And we will let y'all in, and you can see what we're up to over there. That's a really great place where we post projects and in progress projects, questions that we have for one another. It's a really active Facebook group, and we encourage you all to join. Mostly we love to see your takes on the projects that we present to you. So it's a really fun way to share the way that you customize things and make them your own. All right, so back to our exciting news of the day, which is the Why I Sew podcast, brought to you by Sulky. You can find this podcast. We're really launching it this Friday. So we will have new episodes every other Friday for your listening enjoyment. But I am bringing it to you all first as sort of a thank you for joining us here on So What every single week. You will get a sneak peek at the Why I Sew podcast. You can find this right now on the podcast listening app of your choice. If you like to listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or you can also listen to our podcast on our education platform. So if you're over there registering for your notebook embroidery sewing session, you can also browse and find our podcast right there on our education platform. So head on over to sewingonline.sulky.com. You do need an account in order to listen to the podcast there. So if you don't already have an account with your library all set up with tons of Sulky content, you can do so now. Listen to the podcast, grab a bunch of video casts, webcasts, sessions, all kinds of great opportunities, and listen to the podcast there. Or, of course, on your podcast listening app of choice. So, I want to tell you a little bit more about the podcast and introduce our special guest. Before I do that, I'm going to play for you. Oops, sorry, I hit my desk there. I'm going to play for you a little video that we put together that really explains what the podcast is all about and I hope it gives you a great introduction. And then I'll come back and tell you a little bit about our guests that we are interviewing on our podcast. And then I will bring on today's special guest. So here is that little video, and I will be right back after the video ends. All right, I hope that gave you a little bit of an overview. So why I Sew, the podcast? It really is to bring you stories from sewists from all over, whether they own their own business or they're someone like you and me. It's the stories of why we're all in this great space of sewing and quilting and machine embroidery and handwork. And, what makes us, what gives us inspiration to keep going with this hobby or business or whatever you want to call it, this great, lovely world of sewing. What brings us all here, and why do we stay at it, and what keeps us going, and what keeps that creative energy flowing? And, you'd be surprised. Everybody's story is really quite different. Back in the day when I was starting in this industry, a lot of people would say, my grandma taught me to sew. I learned, by sitting under her humming sewing machine. But now the stories are so vastly different and unique and interesting. And I think you'll all really love everyone's story that we have so far. A few people that we have highlighted on the podcast so far, we've talked to Angela Wolf of Angela Wolf Patterns. She is just a phenomenal garment sewer, and her story is just so fascinating to listen to. I think you'll really enjoy that one. We also talked to Mary Fons. Mary Fons of Quilt Folk magazine. You might recognize her, of course, from Fons and Porter's Love of Quilting on PBS for so many years. And, Mary talks a lot about how, sewing kind of helped her sanity and helped her in so many different ways, and finding joy again at the sewing machine. And her story is really great as well. And we also talk with Michelle Morris of Sewn magazine. She's the editor-in-chief of Sewn magazine. She really created that magazine out of a need to see people of color, people of different walks of life, behind the sewing machine. And she has just such a unique and fascinating story as well. So, we've talked to many people so far and are really excited to bring their stories to you as you sew or as you're traveling and as you're creating. So the mastermind, our host of Why I Sew, is Jason Prater, the president of Sulky. And Jason, has so many years in this industry and has met so many people with these different stories. And it's only fitting that he would be the host of our Why I Sew podcast. So I'm really excited to bring Jason on today to Sew What, so we can kind of put him in the hot seat and interview him a little bit, kind of turn the tables. He gets to interview all these great people all the time, so we're going to interview him. So if you have questions for Jason, put them in the comments and in the live chat. We will get back to you with your answers and maybe feature some of them here on today's show. But welcome, Jason, and thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Ellen. I'm so glad to be on So What. Uh, this it's been a long time coming, but I got to correct you on something right out of the gate. That I am absolutely not the mastermind behind this. That would be you. Uh, I just get to be the lucky one that does the interviews. So thank you for that. But no, audience, Ellen is 100% behind this and has done a great job of lining up so many awesome people for me to interview. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here and talk about it.
Yeah, well, I know I talked a little bit about some of the people that you've gotten to talk to, and I know, some of these people you're more familiar with than others. And it's really great listening to the banter that you have and just your overall energy and everything. But why don't you tell a little bit, some people, rewind. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your experience just overall chit chatting with these folks and kind of how that has I don't know, changed maybe or just reaffirmed what you've already thought about why people might sew in general.
Yeah, boy, I have so much to say about that. Coming out of COVID, we started doing these interviews back in December. So we've been going at this for, close 9 months now. We've done about, I don't know, 25 or so interviews. And we have talked to people from every corner of the globe, it seems. We've spoken with people in South Africa, our good friend Zandra Shaw from Embroider Shop. We've spoken with people in Spain. I've spoken with some industry icons, people like Sue Hausman and Martha Pullen, folks that really were with Sulky at the beginning, which is really fun. It was fun to talk to them. Lots of the stories I knew, some of the stories of our early days that I didn't know, even though I've been with the company for 28 of its 35 years. There's some things that happened early on that I think a lot of our audience would be really interested to hear how we worked together with those folks back when sewing was really, in the early 80s, sewing was really starting to become something different. It was becoming something that people did for fun, and it became much more of an entertainment vessel than what it had been prior to that. And so people like that help explore that topic in depth and what their part was in it. These people are folks that our audience would know quite well. We've talked to people of every persuasion. We've talked to several men that are in the sewing business, which has been fun. Some that are famous in their own right outside of sewing, like Mark Montano, who has been on HGTV and now Discovery Plus with various types of shows. Just so fun to talk with so many diverse personalities, people from both sexes, people from various races, and it's cool to see how they all share the same joy of sewing. Many for different reasons. Many got started in it for different reasons and continue to do it for different reasons. But at its core, they all enjoy the same thing. And so that's been fun to see. So many of these folks I did not know. You lined up quite a few people who it was a joy to hear their story and to get to know them because I did not know them before. Some people, it was fun to catch up after I hadn't seen them in several years because we didn't travel a lot during COVID. So yeah, overall, it's been just a great experience getting to talk to these people, and I'm excited to share their stories with our listeners, and I think that they're going to be excited to hear from these people and why they share this passion that our consumers do.
Yeah, I really think there is kind of a misconception with not necessarily people in this people that already love to sew, but the people that don't have a sewing machine that are surprised to hear that you sew. I think there's kind of a misconception that they think that you learned from your grandmother or that it's this thing that's been passed down. But in so many cases of these interviews that I'm listening to, that's actually overwhelmingly not the case anymore. And I think that's what fascinates me most is there's so many people that you talk to that they, for whatever reason, wanted to try it, and maybe no one in their family had ever even done it before. So I think that's one of the cool things that, I took away from it as well. But what do you think kind of surprised you the most, or is there someone that had, um, I mean, I know we don't want to give away too much to the listeners because we want them to hear it firsthand, but was there something that struck out at you like that was kind of surprising?
Well, that very specifically has been somewhat surprising. And at first, I thought maybe it was a generational thing that the people that were of a more mature age at this point, people that had been around the industry for much longer, maybe that was the case where they learned from their mother or their grandmother, and in some cases that is true. But so often, what I found is that the mother probably did so or did craft of some sort. Uh, but oftentimes it was a friend of the mother or a friend of the family. In some cases, even the father, who was the person teaching and showing the person I was interviewing how to sew. And that's how they got their start. And many times it was not them teaching them, just them being around it. And then they ended up learning, technically learning somewhere else. And we all know how that goes, right? It's hard to learn at a parent's footsteps sometimes because it can be frustrating. Kids don't always want to
Mm-hmm.
do
You
exactly
don't
what
want
their
to learn
parents
from
say.
your parents
That's right.
because you're
That's right.
smarter than them.
That's no fun, and that just seems like they're telling you what to do when they're always telling you what to do. So yeah, that was pretty surprising. But gosh, there's just so many different things that are surprising, but just how diverse the group is. And I ran across stories that I just couldn't believe, how people were exposed to sewing and how they were taught to sew. And so, yeah, I think that there's a few mysteries out there that will be fun for people to discover as they listen through these episodes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, I also, I had a little bit of jealousy because there were several people who still had home ec in schools. And so that was kind of their first exposure of sewing. And, I did not have that luxury. Those budgets were cut when I was, in middle school or wherever home ec would start. And so I was always kind of jealous of that, the making of the apron and the pillow with four corners seems like such a, it's always the first project or was in home ec. But I really like what you said, being exposed to it, not necessarily learning for the first time. A lot of people have memories of sewing, but they aren't actually the ones at the sewing machine. And I love hearing those stories about people say, well, I first have memories of when I was 4, listening to the hum of the sewing machine or watching my mom cutting out patterns. And it just gives me the warm, fuzzy goosebumps, hearing those things, because it is such a memory maker. It's a nostalgic feeling, and what motivates us to continue sewing is often because we are trying to recreate that feeling or pass that on to others as well. So I like what you said, we can expose people to sewing without, making them sit down and have a lesson, and then maybe when they're ready, they will also want to sew. So that's also
Yeah.
part of what the podcast is about, is kind of inspiring people to pass it on in some way or another. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Several themes that I've encountered throughout the interviews. That's one of them where you find within the sewing community, whether it's people that are in the industry, which I want to make a comment about that in a second, or just your everyday sewist, one thing that they all seem to have in common is their desire to share what they're doing, their openness and willingness to share what they know, and not ever really being in this sort of competitive feel to it. It's always from a genuine, heartfelt place. And I think that is because of how sewing makes them feel and what sewing has brought to them, and they just want to share that with everybody they come across. So I found that to be, a very strong theme throughout, no matter what the person's background, no matter what type of sewing they do, whether they are an embroiderer primarily with machine embroidery, whether they are a hand sewist, a quilter, you name it. What they really like to do is teach other people and share with other people, and in many cases have become professional teachers as a result in the industry. Um, and so, a little bit of a spoiler alert there, because we know so many people in the industry, we have found as we talk to these people, they've started some business as a result of their hobby, and we will have and are trying to interview more people that's not the case. But I think the reason that is, and the reason that seems so prevalent, and what I have found is that so many people that sew gain confidence, personal confidence in life, just in general, because of their hobby. It helps facilitate this feeling of confidence that they can go out and do whatever they want to do. And in so many cases, that's, hey, well, I really like doing this, so I'm going to turn it into a business. Whether that's a professional, fabric designer. I mean, I've interviewed several people that are artists and design fabrics, whether that is folks that do machine embroidery and do their own digitizing, you name it. It's all across the board. And we found a lot of folks that have managed to turn their hobby into a successful business. And that wasn't the theme to start out with for the podcast by any stretch, but I just think it's a product of it. And you look no further than places like Etsy and other areas where people are selling the things that they make. It's just easy to do, and once folks start creating and they gain confidence from that, they feel like sharing that with other people. So yeah.
Yeah, we get to a point where we start stockpiling the projects, so we've got to either sell them or give them away so we can make more. And so,
That's right.
if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, why not go on Etsy and, sell some of your handmade things? And yeah, I like
Speaking
seeing.
of that was another interesting find throughout the podcast interviews. One of the questions that I like to ask is regarding gift giving and giving handmade gifts, and I'm sure that everyone in our audience will commiserate with this. That that doesn't always turn out like you want it to, right? The thing that you make for someone that you put so much time and energy and effort into is not always the thing that they desire. And so many stories that I heard were not necessarily negative, but almost cautionary, or sometimes the maker would be fearful to give unless there is something very, very specific that the person asks for. But to just make something for someone, I didn't find a lot of people did too much of that.
Oh,
Yes, a lot of
interesting.
people did. A lot of people do give gifts, but I found in a lot of situations where there's a little bit of, uh, being intrepid about that. They didn't feel great always giving a handmade gift, either for reasons of being rejected, which I know everybody can feel for that. Where just so many funny stories uh, of people giving a blanket and then finding out, someone's using it in their dog's bed, or, something of that nature. And so because of that, I think most people that make, especially sew, understand the feeling that might bring if you've spent so much time and energy making something by hand, to find out that the person you gave it to just really doesn't like it. So yeah, that was kind of surprising to me as well.
Oh, you just made me think twice about so many things. I can see that though, especially quilts. Quilts take so much time and you put so much love into that. But I could see as my kids get older, them saying to me, Mom, I have 13 quilts already. Chill out on the quilts. So
Yeah.
I see what you're saying there. But you really put yourself out there, especially if it's a design that is all you. There's a vulnerability to that for sure. So
Unless there's participation from the other side explaining what they like and dislike or want or do not want, it can be 50-50 whether how it's going to be accepted. At least that's what I have found from my interviews.
yeah, I can see that as in something that's a little more intricate. But like, for example, I was just showing off our notebook covers that we have going live today, everyone. Something small like this that's, easy to make. Those are great gifts because, anybody can use a notebook cover and it's a little less threatening, I guess. More
Yeah, there's
easily
not an
accepted.
expectation that you're going to have it displayed around your house, right? Hanging from your wall or on your bed.
Right. Every time Aunt Susie comes over, you got to get that quilt out and put it on the guest bed. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, also, I know that back when we were kind of researching the podcast, we were listening to all sorts of podcasts from sewing related, quilting related, to even like true crime, fun podcasts like that. For people out there who maybe have never listened to a podcast, what would you say to them as far as kind of how easy it is. It might seem intimidating that you've got to go find a podcast listening app and all these things. I know you're a podcast listener, so maybe you can talk a little bit about, when you listen to podcasts and kind of how
yeah.
easy it was for you to sort of get hooked in that.
Yeah, for me personally, I have a 45-minute commute to the office, so it's the perfect time to listen to something that is entertaining. I like to listen to things that are stories, not so much instructional things or self-help things. I find that those kinds of things take concentration. So unless you're going to sit and take notes and sort of be in more of a study mode, those kinds of podcasts are not good for me personally. Why So is very much in line with the way that I like to listen to podcasts. They're all about, somewhere around 40, 45 minutes in length. So they're not going to consume a tremendous amount of your time, but they're also very easy listening, very conversational, very fun to listen to. And they don't require you to think a lot. They're just there for your entertainment. And while you may learn something about maybe your favorite sewing personality, or you may hear some fun technique that you didn't know about, or some great use for a product that you didn't realize it was suited for. Yeah, you'll learn some of those things, but by and large, it's fun. It's just entertaining. And as far as technically speaking, I can't think of anything that's easier. I actually have an Android, but those of you that have iPhones, it's super simple to get the app for listening. Apple, it's Apple Music, right? Or you have a separate app for podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So you just search the Apple Store for the podcast app, and the same goes for Android. If you go to the Google Play Store, you just download the Google Podcast app, and once you do, you can use the search just like you do on a website. You just type in a topic, a person's name, all sorts of different ways that you can search. But if you just type in "sew," or in our case, "why I sew," you'll quickly find this podcast, and then you can subscribe to it. And the fun thing about that is once you've subscribed, there are settings in your app that will notify you when there's a new episode. It'll also just make it easier to find that particular podcast episode. So the ones that I like, that I subscribe to, when I launch my app, I quickly see those along the top, and I can scroll through them and see the newest episodes from those podcasts. So super easy to use, but I would highly recommend, if you like the podcast, that you subscribe to it. That way, you're always in the know when a new episode is available. And we do have plans, right, Ellen? We're gonna be releasing these every other week.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot of material in the bank, and we're going to be doing more interviews. But sometimes there may be a special episode that's launched in the middle of that. Maybe we do a bonus episode here or there, and you're going to want to know about that. And the only way you're going to know right away is if you subscribe to it.
Yes, and we also really would love it if you rated the podcast and gave us your feedback. Just like with the products that we create, we want to hear how you enjoy using them. So we want to hear how you're enjoying the podcast, and that's how we can tailor the content to better serve you. If you want to hear something that we're just not asking these folks, please let us know, because we'll ask them. It's for your listening enjoyment, so we want to make sure that you're getting the information that you want, and hearing what you want to from these folks. Another thing
That's a great
along the lines. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a really great point. I've been highly critical of myself throughout the process. Just making sure that we keep it entertaining. That we're not saying the same thing over and over and annoying folks. But at the same time, our core group of people are all internally are all from within the industry, and while we had them listen to the early episodes and give feedback, having the feedback of all of our listeners and our fans is just hugely important. And positive, negative, we would love all the constructive criticism that you have, so that we can make it better and more entertaining for you. I mean, I'm sure there's many things, and also many people. And if you have a great story, by all means, we want to hear it. So we have a form, I believe, on the podcast homepage that you can submit if you'd like to share your story. And Ellen can tell you more about exactly where that's going to be located. But yeah, that's a great point, Ellen. We really want that feedback. I want that feedback, so that we can make this as entertaining as possible and cover as many different topics. I mean, there's lots of stuff in the sewing world that I don't know about, and so if you have something unique and different, we'd love to hear it and then share it.
Yeah, and even people that you would like us to interview. If if there's a sewing celebrity out there that you just love, and you love his or her patterns, we'll get in touch with them and let them know that you want to hear their story. I think it's really important to bring these stories to people. It makes us not feel as alone in these pre-COVID times, wherever we're at on the daily. Because it always seems to be changing. But that's part of the reason also why we created this, is because we are this community and we're in this together. And that's also what So What is about. There's a lot of you out there. Like I said, I recognize your names week to week. And, when I see you on the road, it's like we're best friends, and we know so much about each other by now. And that's what the So What is about. And that's also what the podcast, the spirit of the podcast, is coming together and learning more about each other and sharing those stories. There was one podcast in particular that really, it brought tears to my eyes, was Desiree Habicht from Desiree's Designs. And, Desiree has done many Sulky events with us in the past, and we love working with Desiree. And her story is there's some heart-wrenching parts of her story. I won't go into it so that you all can listen to it with fresh ears. But you just never know what someone's going through, and what happened in their lives to bring them to this point. And, we're all here for each other and to comfort each other. And I know you've heard those stories time and time again too, how the sewing industry has rallied behind people going through tough stuff.
Yeah.
And, I have my own personal story with that as well. And, Jason interviewed me for the podcast
I
as
was
well.
gonna
So y'all,
say you're gonna get to hear all about Ellen's at some point as well. We did do an interview with Ellen. It was a very good interview. It'll be fun to share that one.
yes, if they haven't heard from me enough here on the So What, they can hear from me on the podcast as well.
That was, you asked earlier about well, I guess I just kind of made the comment about the various themes that I've encountered, but certainly one of those is how sewing has helped people through tough times in their lives as well. Countless stories that I've heard throughout my podcast interviews of people, how sewing has been a healing activity for them in one way or the other. How it brought peace and harmony back into their life after uh, sometimes not necessarily catastrophic event, but sometimes very, very much that. So yeah, that's been another theme that I have come across in a very large portion of these interviews. Not every one of them, of course, and
Mm-hmm.
they're not all soppy or sad. They're not going to bring you down for sure, but there are definitely some places within some of them where we encounter how sewing helps someone through a tough time.
Yeah, and I hope that, that's part of the reason why we are here for people as well, is to bring them out of that and put some creativity in their lives and focus their energy on something else for a while and give them that little bit of escape. So, Jason, I know that you're not one to sit at the sewing machine, let's be real here. But with your vast experience with Sulky and just in the industry in general, you're being exposed to it all the time. So, I'm not going to ask you why you sew, but I would like to hear, why are you in this industry? What brought you to Sulky? And quite frankly, why do you stick around?
Well, what brought me to Sulky is a little less exciting, I guess. But when I started out in this business, my stepmother actually worked for our manufacturing partner, and I was looking for a change of location. I was just turned 20 years old, and just happened into a good situation, and our business is owned by great people. Fred and Joyce Drexler are awesome people that treat folks like family, which I have found that same feeling throughout our industry. When I was much younger, after starting here and working my way through college and all of those things, so many of my friends would ask, what you do, what you work in, what industry? Sewing? Like, does that even exist anymore? And it's like, yes, it does. And you'd be surprised at how big of an industry it really is. But what I always come back to and what I always tell people, and this has been mentioned so many times throughout our interviews, is just how good the people are. I don't think that, and this has come from people that have made it really big in our industry and have built very, very successful businesses. And they all say the same thing about just how much of a family this industry is. People treat each other with respect and dignity. There's not a lot of backstabbing type competition that you might find in other industries. I can tell you just from personal experience how many times we have worked in some capacity with our competitors, and had a couple of beers in the evening with people that whose products directly compete with ours. But we've never felt like, and I've never felt like, those people were my enemies, or that somehow we couldn't be friendly. And I do believe that's very unique to this industry. I'm sure there are other industries where there are a lot of people that are friendly with each other, but I don't think that there's one that shares the same love of helping each other, sharing with each other, and trying to just uplift everybody. I think this industry understands that as a whole, we are much stronger, and that's really what's kept me around. Um, beyond just the people that I worked with very specifically. I've always been treated like family from Fred and Joyce, as well as our manufacturing partners in Germany. They both run family businesses, and that's how they treat their people. And I find that to be the case in a lot of areas of our industry. So yeah, you know, without getting political, I guess, but so many times it's been brought to my attention. This is not necessarily the manliest of professions, and it's like, you got to be kidding me. There are lots of successful men in this industry, but yeah, that's what's kept me around. It's just a good place to work, good industry to be in. But you made me think of something else, because and I have to say this because I've mentioned it so many times throughout the podcast, and I want people to listen to it and to be looking for this. But this industry is so full of very strong and successful women, and I don't think that that's something that should be overlooked. In our society, we're always looking for places where the ceiling is not there for certain people, places where there's opportunity for everybody. And I think the sewing industry has done a fantastic job of giving opportunity to women, and has really brought a lot of good, yeah, heck, to the world, really. When you look at what strong, successful women there are in this business, and how much they do and how much they give back, it's pretty cool. It's if you have a daughter, and you're looking for a place for her to be successful, this is an area where she can, and not just at the not just at the sewing machine, but as a business person, as a business owner, as a marketer. This is a place where women can flourish, and have.
Yeah, and I mean, just over the 15, 16, however many years I've been in this industry, it's really opened up a lot more. So, I think there's still definitely room for improvement, but it's better than it was even just 10 years ago as far as that goes. And I think it goes back to that confidence level, thinking that you can do it and seeing other people doing it, and having that confidence. So I think that's what we're bringing people as well, is we're presenting these successful people and showing you, like, that can be you also. So I just love everything about it. I'm so excited to bring it to everyone. And um, I'll thank you very much for being here. And then I'm going to tell everybody a little bit more about what they can find on the website, so how they can navigate to hear a little bit more about the interviews and learn more about the folks that you've interviewed. But I thank you for being here and sharing all of that with everyone. I'm so excited for them to hear your interviews and provide that feedback. So thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me on and letting me tell our audience all about it. And thank you for thinking of it, and for bringing this to fruition. It took a little while, but it was a great idea, I think, and I'm excited to see it unleashed, and to grow, and for sure, I'm very excited to get the feedback of all of you, our audience, so that we can make it even better and bring you content that you want and that is going to entertain and inspire you. So, yeah, thanks, Ellen.
Absolutely. So, speaking of that, bringing your stories to the podcast, Jason talked about it a little bit, but we've set up a landing page on our website, and I have linked directly to it in the description of today's post. So, if you're not seeing that link, remember to click on that little See More button, and then you'll see the whole description pop out for the episode of So What Today, and you'll find that link where you can go and learn more about the podcast and the people that we are featuring. And you can also submit your own story. So we would love to feature you as a guest on the podcast as well. You can give us a little blurb about your sewing story, fill out our form, and then if we contact you to be interviewed by Jason on the podcast, you'll receive a special gift from Sulky, and you get to hear your own story aired on the podcast. So that's pretty cool. And a lot of your familiar names, I would love to see you submit your stories because, I feel like I know a little bit about you just from our interactions here on Sew What, but I would love to hear your story about why you sew, about what keeps you sewing, your favorite things that you have made. Back when we were doing research for the podcast, we reached out to you then, you might remember, about your sewing stories. And we did hear back from a few people, and it's just so fascinating and interesting to hear, what brings you to us, what brings you to Sulky, and what just motivates you to sew day after day. So I think that you'll really enjoy listening to the podcast. And if you're new to podcasts, don't be scared. All you have to do is kind of find the podcast app that you prefer to listen on, and just give it a try. And you'll be surprised how many sewing and quilting related podcasts, crafting podcasts are out there. You might just get hooked. Patty Lee, who is our, VP of Consumer Relations. Many of you have heard from Patty in the past, and, you direct your questions to Patty, and she's so, so awesome and has been with Sulky since the beginning. She was kind of on the fence, like, do I really need podcasts in my life? And we got her hooked. So if we can hook Patty, I think you'll all find that the podcast is your new favorite thing to listen to, again, while you're sewing, while you're on the road, while you're on a road trip, and working out, just wherever you would normally listen to your favorite music, give the podcast a try. So thank you very much, everyone. Head on over to that podcast landing page and check it out. And let us all know what you think at info@sulky.com. You can always email us there or give feedback on the podcast app itself. Rate and review, and we appreciate it so much. And we appreciate you being here with us today on another Sew What. Be sure to tune in next week as we dive further into National Sewing Month, where we celebrate our love of sewing. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you on another Sew What.